maps of the National Military Park today. The intersection here of Alexander Bridge Road and Brotherton Road is a prominent landmark, and particularly on this part of the battlefield. And you may have noticed that in general, the Alexander Bridge Road runs on a line from the northwest to the southeast. Now it's not perfectly straight, there's some curves in it, and it's not exactly a line northwest to southeast. And the Brotherton Road kind of runs from northeast to southwest, although not quite at the same angle. So this is not actually a true 90-degree intersection here, although it was made that way by federal highways. So north is essentially in that direction right from this point. And some of you all may have a compass really handy. Some of you all may have your compass app pulled up on your smartphone. But in general, north is in this direction. And some of you all know that just down the field here is the Brock, or just down the road is the Brock Field. And so if you want to orient your the map that I provided you with the ground, the top of it, which would be north, would be pointing in that direction. And we are right now here near at the intersection, which is just to the left of the W in Winfrey. Everybody see where the W in Winfrey is? Get a couple more copies of the map. The Confederate brigade that we're going to be talking about, Walthall's Mississippi Brigade, is going to be moving into action basically from south to north. They are the right of two brigades. Govan's Arkansas Brigade is on their left, but all these two Confederate brigades are attacking from south to north. Now that gets to be a little difficult to understand and follow, but if you notice the Brock Field over here, which is just down there, that eastern edge of the Brock Field runs pretty much north and south. And so as Govan and Walthall attack northward, they're coming from that direction right across this ground. And that's what we're going to try to do as well. We're going to walk down the line a little ways and join Walthall's advance northward. But you might, in the future, you might think about using this intersection as a potential point of reference as well, with the roads running northeast to southwest and northwest to southeast, and then north and south in between the quadrants here. You can kind of use this intersection as a compass to help be oriented. We're going to move down here a little ways and have fewer potential landmarks to keep oriented on as we go forward. So let's walk down the road just a short distance. We're looking at is Walthall's Mississippi Brigade, commanded by then Brigadier General Edward Carey Walthall. It consists of 5 Mississippi infantry regiments. All 5 of these regiments were created after the governor of Mississippi had begun talking about drafting soldiers to get volunteers. They're not created until the fall of 1861, when some of the realities of the war are beginning to be manifested, particularly the high death rate from disease in the camps, and men being willing to volunteer to be soldiers began to tail off, and in several southern states, there grew to be concern about getting additional troops in the field, particularly since most of the regiments that went out in the spring and summer of 1861 had only gone out for 12 months. And so by the fall of 1861, those units were beginning to be a half a year or just a little more than half a year away from the end of their term of service. And so all three of these regiments, or excuse me, all five of these regiments are not created until the leadership of the state of Mississippi begins to talk about potentially drafting if they do not get volunteers. And so some of these men are reluctant Confederates. If a couple of years ago you saw the Matthew McConaughey movie, The Free State of Jones, about the rebellion of citizens in Jones County and more broadly southeastern Mississippi against Confederate authority, a couple of these regiments have got Jones County companies in them, including the 27th Mississippi, whose major is not here. The major has been sent back to Jones County to round up deserters from the Jones County Company in the 27th Mississippi, and that is the major that Newt Knight murders, or is accused of murdering, that makes him such a hunted man in the Free State of Jones story. So the 27th Mississippi goes into action without their major. The brigade had started the battle just under 1,800 men strong, 1,795 men. They were engaged at Alexander's Bridge on September the 18th and had suffered a little more than 100 casualties in the fight with Wilder's brigade there. And so they've already been bloodied in the Battle of Chickamauga. They had crossed West Chickamauga Creek at Byram's or Lambert's Ford late on September the 18th, had then bivouacked just on the west side of the creek, and then on the morning of the 19th had marched westward onto Alexander Vineyard Road to the south of us, expecting to be part of what Bragg still hoped at that moment would be an attack against the Union left flank at Lee and Gordon's Mill. At a time when Bragg had not anticipated that the Union Army might have shifted their left flank further to the north, as indeed they had. So they arise on the morning of the 19th, expecting to attack to the southwest and south, when all of a sudden, to their north, they hear battle action opening at another point. And they are then going to be sent towards that point. So the tablet here discusses their action in what we're talking about. We're going to shift down just a little bit further and join their line of advance. All right, we've now moved down across the front of Walthall's brigade here, and we're now going to turn and move northward. The Walthall's men say that about 9 a.m. the attention call was sounded from brigade headquarters, and the men formed up in line of battle, and then they moved northward towards the sound of action, and they're going to have to move some distance, more than a mile from where we are right now. They're going to just simply move towards the sound of the guns. Each regiment puts out a company as skirmishers in front of the regiment, and they began advancing through the woods, one of the regimental commanders says that the guide was right as they advanced. And as they come north, they begin to see scattered Confederates going to the rear, some of them wounded, because as Wilson's Georgia Brigade had gone into action, now some of Wilson's men are going to the rear seeking medical attention. There are also some members of Wilson's brigade who've melted away from their line. And so as Walthall's Mississippians come forward, they are starting to see the debris of battle from that action that they are marching toward. They're moving mostly through wooded terrain, and now as we enter the woods here, we're going to be moving almost due north, emulating that advance. As you come down the slope off of the road here, watch your footing, and then watch also carefully your footing as we go across the trail here in the woods. We will have to cross one drainage, but it does have a solid rock bottom. And earlier this morning, it did not yet have any significant running water in it. So let's hope that's still the way we'll get there.
I'm sorry. On the morning of the 19th, which way were they?
They were headed towards Lee and Gordon's Mill.
Right?
Yep. But when the fighting began up here at Jay's Mill, they get sent towards the Sound of Battle.
So they had to do it.
When they had been marching on Alexander Vineyard Road towards Lee and Gordon's Mill, they had been marching left in front, the left end of the regimental and brigade line at the head of the column. So when they were stopped along the road there, they were already facing north. And so now all they have to do is basically march north. And that's along Alexander Vineyard Road. There are tablets down there on Alexander Vineyard Road for Liddell's division. Yep. So we are now on the axis of advance of Walthall's brigade. My path doesn't run perfectly straight through the woods. There were some trees bigger than my loppers would take down. But we're generally headed north now. As they've come north, they have gone through some cedar glades, unique ecological communities in this part of northwest Georgia. But this is the first real sign of human habitation that they have seen for more than a mile through the woods. They have now come to George Winfrey's cornfield, and we are now here at its southwestern corner. When the National Military Park was created, one of the things that the veterans wanted to do was to restore the battlefield to its appearance in 1863. But in the post-war period, as more people had lived in this area, fields had changed in size, most fields had gotten considerably larger, including here at what was Winfrey Field, although Winfrey was long gone by the late 1880s, early 1890s. And so as the veterans worked to restore the historic alignment or pattern of fields and forests, they marked the historic field corners. And fortunately here at Winfrey Field, 3 of the 4 original field cornerstones still stand. And this is one of them, erected by the veterans in the early 1890s to mark the historic corner of the field. The one in the southeast corner still stands, the one in the northeast corner still stands, and the one in the northwest corner stood until 2011, when yet again an overzealous maintenance guy with an ever larger piece of equipment destroyed it, saying, oh, it was covered up with the trees. But their own pictures show that it wasn't. So, but anyway, the 4 corners of the field were marked. But now, put yourself in the shoes of a soldier in the 29th Mississippi. The brigade is formed with the 24th Mississippi on its right, the 27th Mississippi next to the left, then the 29th, then the 30th, and then the 34th. That brigade of about 1,700 Mississippians is now sweeping forward, and for the men of the 29th, 27th, and the left of the 24th, they now emerge from the woods into George Winfrey's cornfield. And let's advance ourselves just a little bit further.
Jim, question.
Yeah.
First of all, how many men in the brigade, and second, how wide is the front?
Okay, well, the brigade had started out in 1800, had suffered about 100 casualties the day before at Alexander's Bridge, so now they are just under 1,700. And I'll address the frontage of the brigade in just a moment. The fact that the corn has been harvested. None of the soldier accounts talk about standing corn in the field. It is now about a month after harvest, so it is possible that all of it had already been cut and harvested. No one also mentioned stalks, but Winfrey could have taken the stalks into his barn, but there are lots of accounts of it being a cornfield, and so there obviously was evidence of that in the field. Now, as you start across the field, notice to your front and left and right, there's some small poles standing in the field. That represents part of the frontage of Walthall's brigade. We are right now advancing on the left of the 27th Mississippi and the right of the 29th Mississippi. If you look to your right at the edge of the woods, there's a pole with a Confederate First National flag on it. It's barely standing out because of the rain. It's now melting in the rain. Then if you look back this way, you see 2 smaller flags close to one another. That's the left of the 24th Mississippi and the right of the 27th Mississippi. Then the next larger flag is the center of the 27th Mississippi. As I said, we're advancing towards the left of the 27th and the right of the 29th. And to your left front, you can see the flag for the center of the 29th, and at the edge of the woods, the left of the 29th, and the 30th and 34th Mississippi are beyond. besides for the 30th, you may see as we cross the road. So that nearly 1,700-man brigade stretches from in the woods in that direction, along this line, and into the woods on the other side. Now, one of the things we do not know is exactly how large this space between, in this case, the right of the 29th Mississippi and the left of the 27th Mississippi was. What was called the interval. No one ever really writes about what the intervals were between the units. So they could have been larger. It was probably not the case that the right man of the 29th was touching the elbow of the left man of the 27th. You needed to have a little bit of room for maneuver. But the intervals could also have been larger. So the brigade front could have still been larger. But this gives you at least a little idea. In the report for the 24th Mississippi, the commander says that the right half of the regiment was in the woods and the left half of the regiment was in the field. I've got their battle flag at the edge of the woods there, the left half of their regiment out in the field. So it gives you a little sense of how big an area one of these brigades would have covered. The brigade does have a battery of artillery, Fowler's Alabama Battery. However, what are they having to advance through? The woods. So they're having difficulty keeping up, and at this moment in the advance, they are not yet engaged in the action. Now, as they come out into the field here, Govan's Arkansas Brigade to their left is engaging Federals. The left of Walthall's brigade is engaging Federals in the woods there. And the men in Walthall's center and right, they don't initially hit Federal troops. But as Walthall and the regimental commanders determine where the threat is, actually lay the men down here in the field for a few minutes, and then they have them rise up and advance against Union troops who are on the fence line at the edge of Winfrey's cornfield there. So now will be the advance of Walthall's brigade as we advance towards the Federals who are firing directly towards us from the edge of the cornfield in our front. Follow me! Looked at the return for his army after Murfreesboro and Perryville and even Shiloh, had seen that mounted officers had died in large numbers. And in the spring of 1863, Braxton Bragg issued a general order requiring that the regimental field grade officers, the colonel, the lieutenant colonel, and the major, go in on foot. And by and large, what I can tell here is they do. There are a few that are mounted, but most go in on foot. If the liquid sunshine is getting too great for anyone, your vehicles are parked just down Brotherton Road here. This is the road that I have closed with the barricades there at the picnic area. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue our walk into the woods here, and then we'll come back the same way and go back that way. But if at some point You've maybe become lightly wounded and need to go to the rear. Once you get to this point, just hit the road and go that way, and you'll find your vehicles there. But as we continue north, and as we approach the edge of the field, what do you notice? Are we parallel with the edge of the field? No. What Walthall's Mississippians are finding is that they are coming in on the flank of Federal units. To their left and beyond, Walthall's left and Govan's Arkansans are striking two Union brigades that had been headed east and now are trying to turn and face the threat that's coming from the south. But so quickly do they have to turn that as they do, they don't get a concerted line established, and as Union troops to our left front here reorient, they turn to face to the south, but the two regiments on this part of the Union line, as they wheel around from facing east to face south, to truly face south, they would have to do what? Move out into the field. But what's right there? A fence at the edge of the field and the woods. And so they stop at the edge of the field. The 33rd Ohio right over here, and the 2nd Ohio on this side going into the woods. But even though they have the advantage of cover and concealment at the edge of the woods, the advantage of the fence, the open field to their front, the rest of their brigade, the 10th Wisconsin and 38th Indiana, are collapsing on their right. And as they collapse and begin to withdraw in the face of the Arkansans and the left of Walthall's Mississippians, it unhinges the 33rd 33rd Ohio from right to left, and then the 2nd Ohio as well. And the resistance that they put up against Walthall's Mississippians here is limited. And Walthall's men, now enthused by their success, raise a cheer and continue to advance northward. And we're going to do the same thing, although as we go back into the woods, we can't follow, the path does not go directly northward. We've got to zigzag a little bit. But now, imagine driving these Union troops off the line, for some of the men of Walthall's brigade on this side, as they advance into the woods, they find the knapsacks of the 33rd Ohio that have been dropped. And what do you think a few of those Mississippians probably took a minute to do? Go through the knapsack. And the left regiment also sweep through the guns and abandoned equipment of Battery A, 1st Michigan Light Artillery, Van Pelt's battery that was in position in the woods, and they turned south to try to stop the advance unsuccessfully. But now there are the dead horses and 5 abandoned guns and caissons of the battery in the woods. The Mississippians continue pushing north. I'm going to push pause on the Walthall story for just a moment. We're generally continuing northward as they did, and now we're going to join the regular brigade of the Army of the Cumberland. They were the 3rd Brigade of the division that included Scribner's Brigade, the 2nd, 33rd Ohio, the 38th Indiana, and 10th Wisconsin, and Van Pelt's Michigan Battery that we have mentioned that the left of Walthall runs over, and another brigade, Starkweather's Brigade, which is further in the woods off to the west of us. The regular brigade, along with all of Baird's division, Scribner and Starkweather, they were all part of the Union night march on the night of the 18th in the early morning hours of the 19th. Absalom Baird was a relatively new division commander to the Army of the Cumberland. He had and was only temporarily commanding this division. This division's normal commander, Lovell Rousseau, a popular Kentuckian, was on an errand for Rosecrans to Washington, trying to get permission to mount his brigade. And so Baird had been assigned to command Rousseau's division in Rousseau's absence. As part of Thomas's night march, the man had marched for several hours, bivouacked for a short time, and then resumed the march. One of the men of the regular brigade, Edgar Wilcox, a lieutenant in the 18th U.S., wrote of that night march, about 8 p.m. we got started on the Chattanooga Road. The road was lined with bivouac fires of troops. We passed through a great many. We bivouacked at 12 o'clock, very cold, and I should suffer were it not for my heavy cavalry overcoat. Took up line of march about 2 a.m., and while halting on the road, some cavalry horses ran away through our battalion and created a perfect melee. In a moment, every man rushed into the woods, one over the other, pell-mell, thinking the enemy's cavalry were on us. A few moments explained it, but some lost guns, some hats. About half my company went over me. We continued our march and got into position on the Chickamauga Field just after sunrise. The panic or stampede that he describes with animals was something that was not uncommon. With a division of 5,000 men having about 2,000 animals, there were quite a few of those over time. And the fear was that they were going to get stepped on by a horse or a mule or a cow, because they were driving herds of cattle along with them for beef. And so when there would be a loose animal, it could quickly create a panic in the part of the men. They reached the Kelly Field. They've marched all night. What do they now want to do? Sleep? Well, wait a minute. It's now morning, just after dawn. Coffee. And very quickly, the men are allowed to break ranks, and hundreds of little fires get started to boil coffee. But soon, they notice that bustling around their staff officers and the division that had followed them, Brannan's division, and deployed on their left. They then hear the To the Colors sounded in that division, and that division marches out into the woods to the east. And as Lieutenant Henry Freeman of the 18th U.S. Says, to our left and front, the heavy report of a single gun followed by that of the bursting shell. Then the steady rattle of musketry warned us that our breakfast, if indeed we were to have breakfast at all, was to be a hurried one. For a moment, we stood listening to the noise of the battle on our left, while it grew in intensity, coming nearer, the continuous roar of artillery almost drowning the more deadly rain of musketry, while at last it reached the division on our left, and the shrill cheers and yells of the advancing Confederates, piercing through the roar of battle, told us that our turn was to come. The assembly is sounded. They form up, and the 3 brigades of Baird's division march out eastward towards the sound of battle, with 2 brigades up and the 3rd brigade following in the rear. The regular brigade is the left front of Baird's 3 brigades, and they're moving from east to west, from west to east through the woods in front of where we are right now. Now, unfortunately, today there's not a path that follows their route exactly, and so we've got to angle up to it a little bit. But as we move from here, we will now be emulating the eastward push of the regular brigade of the Army of the Cumberland. These are these units do not have the designation of an individual state. These are the 15th, 16th, 18th, and 19th United States Infantry. And they are part of the expansion of the regular Army since the beginning of the Civil War. And they are supposed to be the better drilled, better trained, because they are supposedly have a higher percentage of West Point trained officers amongst them. But there's a great turnover in the officers, and so the leadership of the brigade here is quite different than it had been just 6 weeks before in the Tullahoma phase, or 9 months before at Murfreesboro. In fact, they've got King is commanding the brigade now, whereas others had commanded the brigade at Tullahoma and Murfreesboro. Here's a pre-war photograph of John King. You can see he liked interesting facial hair. And a wartime view a couple of years later, when he's a little more mature and a little grayer and has tamed the facial hair a little bit. He had been severely wounded at Murfreesboro, Stones River, and had only returned to command of the brigade in the summer. So now we will follow King's regulars on out to the east.
So what's the relationship between King and then Scribner?
Scribner and King are 2 of the 3 brigades in Baird's division.
So King's brigade is just farther left?
A bit to the left, yes. Baird is advancing 2 brigades up and 1 brigade back. So he's got 3, and he's got 2 up and 1 back. King's regulars are the left front brigade, and Scribner is the right front brigade.
And it's Scribner who is out there.
Scribner, who is over here.
Second Ohio.
Right, yeah. Those guys, yep. And now we're going to go to King. And what you'll notice is that we're going to actually go a little bit further to the east than where Scribner was, and I'll explain that as we go along. But now we're going out to where King's brigade is going to be engaged. All right, we go this way. simply marching through the woods, initially towards the sound of the guns. And they are moving from west to east, and south is going to be about in that direction. And so notice how they essentially be coming in on the flank of these Union troops. These Union troops are being driven back by some of the first Confederates to be engaged in the battle. And so now, as King's men come out, what do they start threatening the flank of? The left flank of the Confederates, Wilson's Georgia Brigade. And they relieve the pressure on Cruxton's Union Infantry Brigade, the 1st Union Infantry engaged in the battle, including the 10th Indiana. And the veterans of the 10th Indiana say it is during this part of the fight where their colonel, William Carroll, will be killed. So now King is coming out and actually relieving the pressure on those 1st Union infantry soldiers who have been engaged. You might notice that there's a large rock area around this marker. Well, when the veterans of the 10th Indiana originally planned for their monument, they thought they would put their monument on this spot. And so a foundation was prepared for the monument. But subsequently, they put their monument on their first battle line off in this direction, and they put this marker to mark this alternate position or later position. But they used the foundation for the monument. This is a little physical insight into how the National Military Park was developed in the 1890s. That King's advance is now essentially relieved.
Was it just random? Were you from? Was it from all over? Just
well,
or did they have a system where okay, we're taking so many? These guys from Connecticut are going here, and these guys from Wisconsin.
When the Civil War began, the regular United States Army was about 16,000 men in size. A small percentage of those men left the regular army and went to the Confederate States of America. But the Congress had already authorized the creation of some new regular regiments, and Abraham Lincoln directed that authorization be fulfilled. And so new regular infantry regiments numbered 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 to 20 begin to be created out of whole cloth. A few officers are detailed from the existing regular army to be the nucleus of each of these new regiments, and each one of these new regiments is given a recruiting area. And for these regiments that'll be in the Army of the Cumberland, it is mostly Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois. And so the officers who have been designated to organize these new regiments go to places like Cleveland and Columbus and Cincinnati and Indianapolis and open recruiting offices. Now, initially, they thought they would recruit on the same basis that the regular army before the war was, which was a 5-year term of enlistment. But, particularly after that first summer of 1863, what was the term of enlistment that the Union Army was trying to recruit for? 3 years. So, okay, you're a young guy in Columbus, Ohio, and you've decided to join up to help preserve representative government on the face of the earth, and you walk onto the square in Columbus, and here's a state recruiting office, 3 years and a $100 bounty. And here's the regular recruiting office, 5 years.
No doubt.
Which one are you going to walk into? So they had a very difficult time recruiting, and this, though, is contentious then and subsequently. It was argued that the quality of the recruits that came to these regular regiments was lower, more immigrants, less English speaking, more lower level of literacy, that the quality of these recruits was lower. And now that was contentious at that time, and you can still get an argument out of Mark Johnson and others today about the extent of that. But those things are true. More immigrants, less English skills, lower educational level. The real issue with these regular regiments seems to be the constant turnover in officers from battle to battle. But you can also say, now wait a minute, how smart is a guy who goes into the office to sign up for 5 years when it's 3 years, $100 over here? So.
Were there only 10 regiments then originally prior to the war?
Yeah. Yes.
And did they stop at 20 in the regular army during the war?
Yes.
And did they meet their quota?
Only by the very end of the war. Okay. Because these regiments were also going to be organized on the new system, yet something else that we have adopted from France. We were not the military leaders in any way at the time. And so military theory was being developed in Europe. Since France had helped us win our independence, we normally looked to France for the ideas. And in France, in the 1830s and 40s, as weaponry technology advanced, they also thought about organization. And the French began promoting regiments that had 3 battalions, each regiment or each battalion having 8 companies. And so you'll notice that the 18th United States Infantry here has companies in the 1st Battalion and 2nd Battalion here, but not the 3rd Battalion. So each one of these regiments at full strength would have been 3 battalions or 24 companies. But none of them are at this strength here because they haven't been able to recruit enough people. And in fact, some, like the 19th U.S. Infantry only has 7 companies of the 1st Battalion and 1 company of the 2nd Battalion with it here. So,
Jim, do they go in as battalions or as regiments?
Well, the 2 battalions of the 18th are going in as separate battalions. In fact, and if I can get some volunteers here, I'll illustrate this. Okay, so you are the 1st Battalion of the 19th United States Infantry. You had the left front of the brigade. So now I need a volunteer to be the 16th U.S. Infantry. You are the 1st Battalion of the 16th United States Infantry. You're the center of the front line of the brigade. And you are the 1st Battalion of the 18th United States Infantry. The brigade has a battery, Battery H, 5th United States Artillery, which is a new artillery regiment that has been authorized. The battery has been told to follow along behind the brigade. And to support the battery, the 1st Battalion of the 15th United States Infantry needs somebody to be back here as the 1st Battalion. Thank you. The 1st Battalion of the 15th United States Infantry is told to support the battery. And initially, you're following along behind the battery through the woods. Well, that leaves the 2nd Battalion of the 18th United States Infantry. So I need a volunteer. Okay. they are going to take position in a second line behind the 1st Battalion of the 18th. Now, they're trying to maintain this formation as they move forward through the woods with their knapsacks on. And they make contact with the enemy. They first clear the front of Cruxton's brigade that I briefly mentioned back there at the Indiana marker. And they cause Wilson's Georgians to withdraw off in that direction and off to the east as well. But in the wooded environment, King's brigade has gotten out in front of Scribner's brigade. So I'll make you all Scribner's brigade over here. And King has gotten out in front of you. This is partly how Walthall and Govan deal with Scribner first there near the Winfrey Field as they sweep to the north. But as King continued to advance eastward, driving off from Wilson, all of a sudden, on the left front, the 19th U.S. Infantry sees and hears action over here. It's Ector's brigade of Texans, North Carolinians, Mississippians, and Alabamans that have become involved in the fighting at Jace Mill and that have been advancing up the corridor of the Reeds Bridge Road. There's some of Forrest Cavalry over in that area as well, fighting dismounted. And as you have advanced forward, your skirmishers have had some contact with them. Your commander, a marionette by the name of Major Samuel Dawson, reports this to King, the brigade commander, and King's brigade actually turns, wheels a little bit to the left, so you all swing around here just a little bit, to deal with Ector's brigade. Now, if you notice in the trees here, the ground's starting to slope down right here. We're on a little rise. And Reeds Bridge Road is off in that direction. And Ector has been moving up that corridor, and now you all come in on the left flank of Ector's brigade. And since you're coming in on the flank, and they have attacked against Vanderveer up on Reeds Bridge Road and have been repulsed, they're falling back. You're sweeping up prisoners. In fact, you're going to get about 120 Confederate prisoners. Some Texans, and others from Ector's brigade. And so now you're oriented a little bit off in this direction. What could go wrong? Yes. What could go wrong? Where does the threat come from? The south or their right? Now, when Absalom Baird had been told to march out to the east to support Brannan's division that was engaged out to the west of Jace Mill, he had been told that his right flank would be protected by John Palmer's troops. Well, that was based on a part of Palmer's command, Gross's brigade, briefly being on the Brotherton Road. But unbeknownst to Absalom Baird, just as he began advancing eastward, Gross is recalled, and he pulls back and sends down towards Lee and Gordon's Mill. And so all of a sudden, what's protecting the right flank of Scribner's brigade? Nothing at all. Now, some of you all have been in the armed services. Those of you who have been in the Army in particular will understand this. If you were told that somebody is going to do something for you, what had you better do?
Plan on it not being done.
Plan on it not being done. You basically better make sure you can do it yourself. And tying in with the other units is one of the most critical things you have to do. Even if you look at the operations plan and it says that you will link up on your right with such and such a unit, you better create your own liaison teams and party to make sure that's going to happen. because more often in military history, throughout time, it has not happened than it has happened. Well, Absalom Baird is new to division command, and guess what he did not check on? Who was watching his right flank. In fact, he only learns of the threat to his right flank in Scribner's brigade first, when a medical officer of Scribner's brigade, who's trying to catch up with the brigade as they advance eastward in the woods, wandered a little bit too far to the south and got captured by the skirmishers of Govan's Arkansas Brigade. Now, under the provisions of the Dix Hill Parole and Exchange Cartel, which had been in place for about a year, but is now in abeyance over the issue of the United States organizing African-American troops and what the Confederates are going to do with any captured African-American troops and their white officers, the medical officers were not supposed to be held as prisoners. Somehow, this doctor was able to convince the authorities that they shouldn't capture him. And as soon as they let him go, guess what he did? He ran and told their Confederates coming up from the south. And the word gets to Scribner and to Baird, and now all of a sudden, what does Baird have to do with his division? Turn it and face it to the south. And Scribner tried to do that back there at Winfrey Field, we saw, and winds up with a line that is bent around the corner of the field. And now King, who at this moment is oriented in that direction, now all of a sudden King needs to be oriented in what direction? This direction. And quickly, the order goes to each one of the battalions to change front to face to the south, and they're going to do that by the commands of right face, and in doing that, the men will double, so there's now a column of 4 in the woods, and the command is forward march, file right, and they then turn right, so they're literally going to try to turn their regimental lines that way. And as soon as they make that right-hand corner and get the length of the battalion or regimental line, the command would be given halt, front. And with that, all they have to do is face to the left, the men step up, and they've got a line of battle again. But what kind of terrain are they doing it in? Woods. And how much time do they have to do that when what's coming up from the south? Confederates. So I'll not make you walk quite that or move quite that same way. But let's emulate a right face, forward march, file right, and we'll see how Baird reacts. As they do, two battalions of the 18th U.S. Infantry wind up on their left. The 19th or the 15th U.S. Infantry continues to follow along behind them, but now, in meeting this emergency, the 15th U.S. Infantry gets moved up on the batteries right. The 19th U.S. Infantry moves into position in the rear in support. And the 16th U.S. Infantry, which was told to support the battery, also wound up in front of the guns. The guns now need to fire. And so what is the 16th Infantry told to do? Lie down. Now, it's a little hard to see, but we're on this ridge line and the ground slopes down in that direction. So they at least have the advantage of lying down on slightly lower ground than the guns. But the guns will open fire and fire over the heads of the prone 16th U.S. Infantry. But nothing ties in the left or right flank of the 16th Infantry, and as the Mississippians sweep forward, they threaten the flanks of the 16th Infantry. The Mississippians get close enough to start shooting down the horses of the battery. The battery commander, Burnham, will be mortally wounded, projectile passing through his chest. And as King realizes the situation is critical, orders the battery to withdraw. It is too late. Too many of the animals have become casualties, and with the 15th U.S. Infantry having no security on their flank, and the 18th being off in this direction, the individual battalions begin to withdraw. As the 15th U.S. Infantry starts to withdraw, the bugler begins to repeatedly play to the colors. And as they withdraw off to the north, William J. Carson will see multiple colors from the brigade in the woods and will run to each one of them and blow to the colors and wave his musician sword that he is carrying. He will be credited with helping the brigade to reorganize here by keeping the men together, at least to a degree, as they withdraw in the face of Walthall's Mississippians. As the regulars are pushed off to the north, Walthall's Mississippians come up and capture the 6 guns of Burnham's battery. Walthall quickly orders some men to begin taking the guns to the rear. But they're going to be hard pressed to do that because there are most of the animals dead or badly injured on the ground. But they do get some guns going to the rear. Baird's entire division is driven back northward, back to the Reed's Bridge Road. But the Arkansans and the Mississippians cannot pursue far because the next federal unit is arriving and is going to threaten their own left flank. And they're going to have to withdraw off to the east and in the process abandon the 6 guns of Burnham's battery. A brief counterattack by the 9th Ohio Infantry and the 17th Ohio will clear the last Confederates out of this area, and word is sent to the regulars that the guns have been recaptured. And the 15th U.S. Infantry will be sent out here, and they manhandle the guns and the caissons off of this part of the field and back to the Lafayette Road at the McDonald Farm where the visitor center is today. But the battery is essentially now out of action. The majority of their animals have been killed, and the battery has taken heavy casualties. Their commander, First Lieutenant Howard Burnham, has been killed, as well with 2 enlisted men, and the wounded include Lieutenants Israel Ludlow and Joshua Fessenden, and 13 enlisted men, and 13 more enlisted men are captured by the Confederates. The battery will not play a role in the rest of the battle. On the morning of the 20th, George Thomas will order it to make its way to Chattanooga. Shattered by this attack as it struck Baird's division in the flank. The individual battalions, regiments did as well as they could. The problem was that lack of protection on the right flank, Baird's failure to ensure that there was security to that flank, and it's another testament to the nature of the Battle of Chickamauga. in this limited visibility, forested environment. How hard is it to know where the threat is coming from? But on this ground, the regular brigade came to grief on the morning of September the 19th. Questions or observations here?
Then the regular brigade catches some grief or so about this, but this essentially happens to every unit that is engaged over.
Correct, correct. Yeah, this is not an uncommon experience. And interestingly, when I had, well, 3 of these regiments still have battalions on active duty today. And when I have one of those battalions here for a staff ride, like I will on Thursday afternoon and Friday of this coming week, 1st Battalion of the 19th Infantry is going to be here. It is hard to get them to want to spend any time looking at this part of the battle. But it's not this is not the soldiers or the lower graded leaders' problem. This is command higher up. And looking at they quickly rally and reorganize.
What else could you do?
That's right. And they fight well on the 20th. So much so that the 19th U.S. Infantry carries forward to this day as their regimental motto, Rock of Chickamauga. So I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of by what's happening here. Now, for this staff ride coming this week, I've got a young lieutenant who I think this will be his first staff ride. So I haven't clued him into, so they're going to get a full dose of this. But it's, yes, too often this looks like some sort of a black mark against these guys, but it's actually not. So
it's a testament to how quickly they reorganize.
That's correct, which is a testament to United States military forces and British military forces. And it largely has to do with education. One of the 2 nations on the face of the earth that have really had the broadest and best educational system through time, the last 200 and some odd years. It's England and the United States. And it's the education, I think, that really allows this to happen time and time again. Well, we're about getting drowned here. The original plan was to go back by the same trail to Brock Field and go back that way. Not that that was the route of withdrawal or anything, but that was just the way I was going to go. We can get out of the woods and on a little better footing quicker if we go down this path to Brotherton Road and then turn right. We would not have to cross that one drainage again, so I think we're going to do that just as out of caution to get on the road quicker. So let me grab my map and we'll head out.